from a very young age, as long as I could remember, I've seen spirit and angels, and they've talked to me. And like most people, I thought that was normal. But at some age, you figure out that nobody else is seeing these things. And, so I grew up with a whole lot of, my goodness, you have the most incredible imagination, or what a vivid imagination you have, or she has imaginary friends and all of that. But I knew from age 18, well, let me kind of go back here because I talked about 13. So I've always been involved in singing and theater, and I would go to a summer camp in Maryland that's at the Seton College. And I was always interested in seances, and I had done some with my friends. But when I went to that college, Maryland Center for the Arts, in the summer, my friends found out that I liked to do seances, and we would sneak into the chapel, and we would do seances late at night after curfew. And it was really fun, and we had some amazing experiences. Like literally Mother Mary came in and was gigantic, full, like vivid in front of us all. And it makes me want to cry when I think about that, because it's just so amazing. But something else happened that was not so amazing at a later one, and I stopped for a long time. So at 18, this is when things started with running into people. Like I'd go to a spiritual circle. That was back in like 78. I went to a spiritual circle, and there was a famous channel who came from somewhere in the Netherlands and gave a presentation, and he was going around the circle and giving everybody a message, and he skipped me, and I thought, oh well, all right. So then afterwards he comes over and he says, you have 9 diamonds around your head. You are a powerful channel. And I'm just, this is before internet, and I lived in a little town. So I finally found somebody who could tell me what channeling was, and I wanted nothing to do with it. I didn't like the sound of that, nothing to do with that. So that started a whole, I think, a long time of shutting down a lot of my mediumship ability through fear, through afraid of what that would mean or what that would be like. But that didn't stop me from doing seances. So as far as seriously doing them, really started when I would say it was in the 90s. I had my first very serious paranormal investigative group, and we would do investigations all around the state, in Jerome and down in the Phoenix area, all over the place. And so sometimes, because every house I've ever lived in has been haunted, yeah, right. As Suzanne Wilson says, when I told her, every house I've ever lived in has been haunted, and she's like, no, Ivory, you're a medium. Everywhere you live, you're drawing spirits to you. And I'm like, yeah, that's a good way to look at it. So, of course, there were houses, like one I lived in for a little bit in the Phoenix area, where a spirit was making itself, it was appearing to me on a regular basis, and it kept telling me it had a connection to my boyfriend at the time. So we started doing some seances in the house, and we did a lot of investigations and got some amazing EVPs. Of that spirit, I still have them. I could send them to the group. They're so loud, and that's one thing I've learned is like EVPs can be so loud and so clear that you can miss them because you're expecting them to be soft, faint, indistinct, or really fast. But these were, you could hear the boots going across the tile floor, and everyone in the room was seated, and then you hear a man's voice sounded just like this. Don't do that. And then a few minutes later, you heard him say, now that's the way to do it. And he was like, sounded like a Chicago gangster, and it fit perfectly with what was happening at the time, which was my friend started to pour coffee for someone in a little break, and the person moved their cup, and he said, no, don't do that. And then when he said, now that's the way it's supposed to be, was when I pushed my cup over, I pulled my hands away, she poured a cup in, it was all good. So later we did another session in the bedroom with video, and our videographer was teasing the spirit and saying, what do you think about Ivory being with this person that I'm not going to name? And right away the whole video camera fell over, and Barry was pushed to the floor, and on the video camera recording you hear, not gonna take that. So I've got 3 separate recordings of that particular spirit, and then and he did follow around to a few houses, but that's what really started it, because we thought, well, let's explore what this is. So we would meet in the living room, and even in Phoenix, we'd try not to do this in the worst of the summer for obvious reasons. It'd be 115 degrees out, and we would turn off the air conditioning, turn off the fans, no open windows, and just discovering how certain spirits communicate in different ways. Sometimes they're good at moving things. Sometimes they were good at making sounds. Some are really good at going around the circle and touching everybody in some way. And then some, and I have this on video too, would do interesting things with candle flames. And I'm sure there's people in this group who've experienced that as well, where you say, can you show me what you notice the candles start to do bizarre things, like it's first like this, there's no air movement in the room, suddenly it bends over like this and stays there. That's not normal candle flame behavior. So we said, okay, it's clearly manipulating the candle flame, and would say, show us what a yes is, and it would go back up and then bend straight over the right angle. Show us what a no is, it would stay straight. And then it would even follow command, like if this is a certain spirit, would you dance the candle flame? And it would start doing like this, and it would only do it at that time. So that was an interesting experience with what can happen there. I feel like doing mediumship then, even though I knew about spirit, I did a lot of spiritual protection. I think that because I had not fully developed my mediumship gifts to a professional level, that it couldn't go to the level it does now with our current group. Plus, it's a completely different group of people. And I know, Dr. Hogan, you've talked about this so many times in different things you've written about. This so important. The people that are in your circle is really where it starts. They have to be the right frequency. They have to have the right intentions. And I'm going to talk more about that, because it was a very, very powerful lesson last week at our last circle on that very, very topic. But I want to kind of move ahead here, because we started this AREI local chapter in Sedona, and we originally started, we were meeting, and once a month we would talk about anything about afterlife topics and have a discussion and little presentations, and we would practice different types of afterlife communications, EVPs, and using your smartphone to video, taking spirit photography, all kinds of different things. That group whittled its way down over the course of a year and a half to a group that felt like they'd gone as far as they could with developing these skills, and we were doing a seance once a month, and I could tell, it was very clear that the main interest was doing the seances, and my time's getting more precious. Professionally, it's getting harder. So I said we could meet once a month, and they voted to do seances. So that's what our focus is, that, and we still do clearings in homes where we cross spirits over. We don't charge or anything like that. We just go in to help local people and help spirits cross. So I want to talk more about this current circle, because it's been very interesting, and this is where it comes back into play of the importance of the vibrational level of each person. I knew most of these people, the ones who started with us and are still with us, about 2.5 years ago, 2 years ago. Every one of them was very high frequency. We have 5 mediums in our group, and I think that helps a lot. And one of them is also a shaman, and I think that makes a big difference too as to why we started experiencing so much right away. So originally we were meeting in my office, but we could never get it dark enough. We just could not, due to various factors. So we tried my dining room. that couldn't get dark enough there either, but we did still have some great experiences there. The very first one we had at my house, 2 of our members are from Norway, and so they're here about half the year and home half the year. That mother and daughter were with us, and at that time we were allowing spirits one at a time to come through, as long as they were at the light and have everyone's best and highest good in mind. And a relative of theirs came in, and all of us, even the people who weren't a medium, were seeing a little red, about a half-inch high red heart. It came out of both of them, out of their heart chakra, and started floating up straight to the ceiling, and it was moving about that fast, and there was a steady stream, and they were about 2 inches apart, little red hearts that were floating up. It went on for about 35 minutes, and even the people who weren't mediums could see that. So the other thing that happened at that first one was just a spirit going around and sort of putting their hand gently on each person's head. And I had asked, they were touching my head, I said, would you please go around and allow everybody to feel what it's like to be touched by spirit, because most of them have never experienced that. So that got them very excited. They enjoyed that very much and felt very encouraged. But we ended up moving into my flex room. Now I know why I have a bigger house than I really need. I thought, what am I ever going to use that flex room for? That's the seance room. It only has one window, so we're able to completely black it out in there. It's really quiet. And we've recently switched to doing the Scole Method, and it's slowly evolving because we have to gather things. We don't live close to a big city, so everything has to be ordered in. And so getting it to total darkness has been really important and great. At our very first seance we did with that method, there were 5 of us, and the first thing that happened is that as we opened up we did all the spiritual protection, built the energetic umbrella above us, and then opened up a portal in the middle of the table and invited one high frequency being to come through to help guide us on our interest in the afterlife and communications and how we could best do this. And a being came through and went into me so powerfully I couldn't breathe. And at that very moment, the medium across the table said, "Ivory, you're glowing." And it wasn't totally dark on that one, so I said, "Are you sure it's not because I'm wearing a white shirt?" She's laughing. She's like, "No, your head is glowing, your hands are glowing." And that thing was, whatever this very high frequency being was, it felt like a pressure on my heart chakra. I could feel it filling up my body in extremely high frequency. My whole body was shaking very, very far, so it was moving my left hand a little bit, controlling a little bit. I've been really working on relaxing myself about this channeling thing that I've been fighting since I was 18. I've done it a couple of times, but I was trying to relax myself, but I think it was so overwhelming. So what happened at that point is it stayed in my body for about maybe 15 minutes, but at the same time, it was moving around the circle. We had our hands touching on the table, and it would move to the person to my right, and I'd hear them go, because it was just so incredibly high frequency. It was sort of a shock to the system, and it was going right around the table. For the mediums, it stayed in them longer. For the other people, it went around the circle a total of 22 times in the course of an hour. And so after this happened, everybody got that extremely high frequency. I don't know if anybody, I'm sure Sherry's had this, where you feel that just shaking like you're terrified, only you're not terrified. Your whole body's shaking really, really hard. So what else happened at that? So that's where, this is not unusual for us, but it was more pronounced than usual, that in a particular corner of the room, something started to manifest itself, and it was a blue and green light, and it had a mass in the center, and it had beautiful flowing rays coming out of it, and then there were balls of light. They were not very distinct, but everybody could see them coming out of that, very slowly moving across the room in different directions. So I just don't want to leave anything out if there's just something else that happened. So at one point, I remember we had our hands on the table, and I said, "Can you lift the table and move the table for us?" And Julia, who's another medium in the group, said, "My hands aren't touching the table." And at that point, we all realized our hands were not touching the table. We were still touching hands, but we were about a few inches off the table, and our hands continued to lift until joined together like this. until they were about shoulder level around the circle, and they stayed that way for a while. Through no effort, nobody's moving their hands. We didn't even realize it was happening. And we thought that was actually sort of a little humor on the part of this being, because it's like, can you lift the table? I'll lift your arms instead, you know. But it was very interesting because the spirit stayed for a long time, and it wasn't a spirit. This was extremely high frequency, a very high level angel, ascended master. Um, it has not named itself yet, but the frequency was, to me, felt like an archangel. So what happened after that was interesting. We didn't keep it going once that entity left. We were all, you know, I was pretty exhausted because I'd had that energy in me most of an hour. And everybody left, and I felt like I needed to lay down on the sofa for a little bit. And I slept, and I woke up, and that being came right back inside me again. That happened at breakfast every day for over a week. It happened at the office. It happened in my car. And I found out it was happening to a couple of the other mediums, and even a couple of people who aren't mediums are still, we were talking about this last night, we're still feeling that come in outside of the circle. And what I heard was preparing you for channeling. I think that they're trying to help me break through my own fear that something, even if it's super high level, that somehow it's going to take me over. You know, I don't really think that's true, but there's some little part of me inside that I think has just enough fear about that. So that's the thing I had asked them, is please help me not be afraid. You know, if I can help in some way with our circle, with showing people there is truly an afterlife, with anything to help people with the fear on the planet right now, I'm willing to do it. So that's what happened. And there were other people for quite a while now who really wanted to be a part of this. And this is what I want to talk about. I always took this seriously, but I got super busy and I didn't follow my own protocol to the letter. And it's been shown me why that can never happen again. So I'm telling you this like a cautionary thing here. There were some people, there was a guy who came to one of the educational meetings recently, and he seemed okay. I had some slight reservations, but nothing concrete, and nothing really jumped out at me. And so I invited him to come to the circle. And when he showed up, his wife was with him, who I had briefly chatted with through email but never met. And she felt she felt pretty darn dark, like standing at my doorway. But here's where I went really wrong, because when it's protecting the people, yourself, the people in your circle, the space you have your seances in, you can't let politeness take precedence over safety. And I really should have said, I'm so sorry, but I'm not going to be able to have you participate tonight. And it was interesting because when he was there with her, it was very evident, like the strangeness about him became more evident. But no, my polite, nice side with a Southern mother side let them in and let them sit at the table. And this is what happened. That being came in, and it didn't stay in me or anyone else as long as it normally did, but it came in and it went around the circle, and we heard this very low-toned, animalistic growl. And I immediately said, what was that? And it's dead silence. And finally, my friend next to me said, that was this guy. Dead silence. He didn't volunteer that it was him. His wife didn't volunteer it was him. I was like, okay, that's strike number 2, right? That's a huge strike right there. And that was right at the moment that this very, very high frequency being came in. And so just kind of heads up to you, this obviously was a person who had some darkness attached to them, these 2 people. And when a high frequency being comes in, they're not going to like that. I don't know about all of you, but I've gone through this my whole life where I meet certain people and we may have gotten along okay through email or, you know, an online acquaintance, and then you meet in person and there's just like an instant recognition, good recognizing evil and vice versa. And that was exactly what was happening here. So I think you have to be very, very careful about that. And if you have any kind of reservations about the people, it's better to be safe than sorry. So at that very moment, that's the only weird thing that he did. But what happened that was interesting is this time I had my hand under my friend who was sitting next to me, I know very well, and her hand started lifting. Mine wasn't on the other side. My hand wasn't lifting, but I kept my hand with hers. And I'm going to move so I can show you this better on this little screen. So it was her left hand that was being raised up, and mine's under it like this, and eventually I'm hanging onto her thumb because her hand's being slowly moved around like this. And then it lifted way up and went way back with my hand and stayed there. And finally I heard she needs to be out of the circle at this time. So we let her scoot her chair back and we closed the circle there. And for the rest of that hour, she sat back there with her arm. And this is a person who has a severe back injury and usually can't even get her arm up that straight. So, but we heard that there's healing taking place for her. And at the same time, two of the members were saying they felt like their neck was being gently manipulated like this. And both of them turned out to have some neck issues. I can't explain how this was all kind of overlapping, happening on top of each other. So I'm making it sound like it's linear, but it was very much overlapping. And that being was manifesting up in the corner again. That was extremely high frequency, and it was the same blues and greens. And then it moved to the center, and up where we had created that energetic umbrella, you could see the energetic umbrella. It was white and glowing. Up at the ceiling level, and we could all feel the energy coming down from that around the circle. Balls that were, I estimate, the size of a softball with a soft muted edge were moving at a medium rate across the room, out of the corner of the room, over the table, back towards the corner of the room, around in the room. I was so happy that the biggest things that happened, especially like the arm moving, happened to somebody who's not a medium and has really not experienced very much. So that was she really needed that. And she was talking about it last night. She just kept, I don't even know what to say. Words fail me. I don't know what to think about that. But what happened was, I said, well, please let me know how you're doing in the morning. If you need anything overnight, call me. And I said, I want to know how you're feeling. I was hoping maybe her pain level would go down. But she told me last night that what happened was she's been severely depressed, which we all knew, and it's due to her pain. And overnight, that was gone. And she felt so happy. And we were out doing something fun last night with a group, and she was laughing and joking. And her mother said, I haven't seen her like this in a long, long time, and got teary-eyed. And her mother's a part of this circle too. So I think that it's interesting that it's as soon as we started switching from kind of the old seance format into the Scole method, where it's more about asking for someone to come through who can help you, who can lead you, give you information, tell you what to do to make your circle more effective, to get better evidence. That's when these more high-level beings started coming in, and much more powerful things happening for us. So honestly, we've only done that method twice, and the last time was Thursday night. But I do think it helps a lot to have so many people in the group who are mediums or a shaman, because it's just very high-frequency people. But my lesson there is, no matter how busy my life gets, I cannot bypass my regimen for deciding whether a person gets invited to come into the circle. So I uninvited them after that first meeting. I said, I'm so sorry, but we have to decline your permanent membership. It's just not a good fit. And of course, I received a long email this morning telling me what a horrible egotistical person I am, but I expected that. I expected them to get angry, and that's okay. So I don't know. I'm always hesitant about talking about the dark side of things, but I've been hit by so much of that in my lifetime, and I work with a lot of clients who have as well. So I feel like not talking about it is dangerous. To not um, to not talk about that aspect of anything. And you don't even have to be doing seances to come in connection with that. So just something to be very aware of and trust your instincts. And everybody has intuitive ability. You don't have to be a psychic or a medium to get a feeling about a person that there's something's off. And if something feels off, no matter what they're presenting to you, I think you need to honor that. I'm trying to think if I've missed anything super important. Well, I think it's very important to say this. I should have said this. When we first did the Scole Method, there was halfway through that seance, that being was still going around. And then, I don't have any other way to say this, Jesus came through. And Jesus, like, hit everybody in that circle. And when we turned on the lights about 20 minutes later, everybody still had tears just running down their face. And they just felt like they had this powerful sacred experience that I only had anything close to that when I was 13 and Mother Mary came through. So that was powerful, and I have no idea. I don't think we're so super special or anything. I don't know why Jesus came through, but I'm eternally grateful that he did. And I could hope that that means that we're on the right track here with trying to get some things to help people, because right now there's so much fear in the world, and people get paralyzed when they get afraid. When they get into the frequency of fear, they do nothing. They're afraid. So anything we can do, and fear of death is always there for many people. So that's always something. I used to be a mental health therapist. I worked in that field for 16 years, and I worked in a psychiatric hospital, and I became very aware of the effect of fear on people, and helping people deal with grief and with fear was part of what I did professionally. To me, this was like an extension and deepening of that work, taking it to the next level. So I don't know what more. Let me see. I've talked like 31 minutes, but I don't know. Is there any questions about any of that?
Let me call on Craig first of all. Craig?
Ivory, that's wonderful. In your experience with your group, are you holding hands the whole time?
We are. We have a hand under a hand like this on a table.
Okay. And then are you putting anything in the middle of the table, the way the Scole group had?
We haven't yet, but it took us a while to find glow in the dark tape like they talk about in that Scole Method book.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have that, so we put it on the table in front of each person, where I'm making wristbands. Since they keep pulling hands up, we want to be able to see where people's hands are. But we're also seeking a ping pong ball and some other lightweight items. We're going to put that glow in the dark tape, put it in the middle of the table so we can see if anything levitates or moves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good.
About that.
Good. And you can get ping pong balls that actually glow in the dark. So you can get them that already glow. Your experience with the negative entities, did you have another experience that you were alluding to with a negative entity?
Mm-hmm.
We've had experiences. Yeah.
This is the first time we had anything that was dark come through in a circle, and immediately I felt that energy, the low frequency energy, and I said I'm turning the lights on. We're not continuing, and I found out later, nobody wanted to say anything, but later they're like, I didn't want to say it right then, but I was really uncomfortable with that. But never before, but we haven't had anybody with any kind of low frequency at that circle before. And I don't know how the husband managed to cover up the dark part of him. I thought he was just squirrely, a little weird. And I don't think somebody's bad because they're weird, who am I to say? But I don't know how he managed to cover that up at our previous meeting, but he did. So I think the most important thing is, as soon as you become aware, you just got to excise them out of there.
Yeah, that's what we did. Yeah. So anyway, I don't want to dominate. So thanks, Ivory. Wonderful.
That was so interesting. It was great, Ivory. It was great. Yeah, I find interesting that only about 4 weeks ago now, that was one of the topics in a seance we had. And we had some sitters who were very inexperienced. Then we had a sitter who was more interested in, I don't know actually what he's interested in. But I was saying that last week, and I have trouble with saying to people, you know, I really think you might not fit in because, you know, I really like everyone. I hang out with them. They're friends. It's very difficult to say, you know, just for this group, I think you're not quite right. So I didn't listen. I thought, you know, the energy is not really where it should be. And then when I was asking about it more in a general question, I said to the communicator, well, you know, I just wonder, it just feels below what we are used to in what is happening or how I'm feeling. So is that just my state of mind or what is it? And the answer just was, we only can always work to the level of the least experienced person. We need sitters who are in a way not have the same faculties as the medium. So we can then build up the phenomena on that. The energy, and it never ever says anything about the person themselves. They're just not matching, and you need to honor that if you feel they're not matching, because in a way you're just blocking what we would like to do, and we can't, you know. And the same is the medium's mind. How much the medium's mind can stop that what is taking place in the seance room, because they want something. 2 of my friends who are very, very good mediums, public mediums, both had this experience this year where they wanted something so badly to happen for the sitters that the spirit team said, yeah, well, nothing is going to happen because we actually cannot do what we wish to do due to the fact that the medium's mind is just blocking us with his wonderful expectations, but it's not going to happen. And
it's a lot like taking to the next level. When somebody comes in for a mediumship reading, I always tell them, if you can leave your expectations behind, if you can put them away and just be open to what spirit wants to give you, the reading will go better. And the same is absolutely true. I'm glad you brought that up. It's so true for our circles. We need to just not expect that what's been happening will happen again, or something that what happened for the Scole group, so now this is going to happen for us. No, because we're different people. We're so different people.
Thank God for that.
One thing I want to say too that Inga reminded me of is for the people who have the ability to feel energy, something that another medium and I were talking about last night that I really felt, and is now something I will be permanently looking for if we ever add a new person, which is, I'm not so sure we will. But what happened was, first off, what Inga said, that the frequency didn't get as high as we're used to. And then the second thing was that I could feel when we connected hands that there was like usually if there's somebody who's inexperienced, I'll feel like a dip in the frequency where they are, but where there was that couple was like a void of energy. It just like stopped and then skipped over 2 people, which definitely affects the circle's energetic ability to manifest any kind of being, spirit coming in and have anything happen. So some other things you can look for.
Yeah, they leave him out in a way. When we have a seance, for instance, you will hear, if you can't feel it, you will hear people saying, well, nothing happening in my corner. And I go, okay. Just go around them.